Hi, Stuart Talley here to do another update on the Pinnacle metal-on-metal hip trial. Today there was some more testimony from Dr. Tony Nargol. If you've been following these videos, you know that Dr. Nargol is a surgeon in Northern England who was an early adopter of the DePuy ASR metal-on-metal hips and the DePuy Pinnacle metal-on-metal hips. He was the first surgeon to reach out to DePuy to report problems that he was having with his patients who were having reactions to metal wear debris with those two types of hips. During his testimony, he discussed extensively a meeting that he had with DePuy and various government regulators from England concerning the Pinnacle. This meeting happened in 2012. And during the meeting, he presented data concerning the revision rates he was experiencing with his patients at his hospital who had received the DePuy Pinnacle hip. Now, what's important to know is that 2 years before this meeting, the ASR hip had been recalled. And what Dr. Nargol was reporting was he was saying that he was seeing the same pattern with the Pinnacle that he saw with the ASR hip. And he was the first one to learn about the ASR hip, or at least discover the problems with it, and his early reports of problems turned out to be correct. Now at this meeting, DePuy presented evidence showing that the revision rate for its hip was not extraordinarily high, that it was actually low and was within standards. Which was different than the data that Dr. Nargol was presenting. DePuy labeled Dr. Nargol an outlier, meaning that his revision rate was much higher than everybody else's. And Dr. Nargol was not happy about that. He felt bad about it. He believed that maybe there was something that he was doing that was wrong with respect to the way he was putting these hips in. Now, during the direct examination of Dr. Nargol, he was presented with various internal documents at DePuy showing that there were problems with the Pinnacle hip that were being reported by other surgeons around the world. And he was asked, did anyone at this meeting share this with you or the regulators? And the answer was no. They had not, Pinnacle or DePuy had not shared this information with the regulators. He was also presented with an internal study that was done to look at the failure rate or revision rate of the Pinnacle metal-on-metal hips. This was an internal report that had been prepared by DePuy, specifically looking at the Pinnacle. What this report showed was that at 5 years, the revision rate for the Pinnacle was 14%. At the meeting, they were telling the regulators and Dr. Nargol that the revision rate at 5 years was actually less than 5%. So this internal document directly contradicted what DePuy was telling Dr. Nargol and the regulators at this meeting. Now, after Dr. Nargol was done testifying, the defense attorney for DePuy was able to cross-examine him. On cross-examination, the defense attorney made the point that he's made with numerous witnesses in this case, that doctors putting in metal-on-metal hips early on knew that these hips could shed cobalt and chromium ions. They knew that the health impact of these ions was unknown at the time. And so the theme that DePuy is pushing in this trial is that doctors know the risks, and if a doctor decided to use a Pinnacle metal-on-metal hip, that's on them. It's not on DePuy. That it's the doctor's decision. And so that point they tried to make multiple times. One of the points that they tried to make that really in essence backfired, I think, on DePuy was Dr. Nargol reported that he thought DePuy wasn't taking the situation seriously, that they weren't investigating his complaints, and they really weren't looking into it. So On cross-examination, Dr. Nargol was presented with a document that discussed an investigation that had occurred at a hospital in Cardiff, England. There was basically an email that said, you know, DePuy, or the representatives of DePuy, met with the surgeon at Cardiff and looked at his revision rate, and his revision rate was very low. In essence, supporting this idea that during this time period, there really was a lot of uncertainty as to whether there were problems with his hip or not. When Dr. Nargol was presented with this email, he responded that he didn't believe the email. He thought the information on there was false because he had personally spoken with the surgeon at that hospital referenced in the email, and that surgeon had conveyed to him that his revision rate was through the roof. It wasn't low. So that was a line of cross-examination that really didn't work out the way I think the defendants wanted it to. So that is sort of where we are right now. The defendant is not done with Dr. Nargol. I'm sure they'll have more questions for him in the next round of testimony. And then the plaintiffs will have a chance to redirect, so ask further questions of Dr. Nargol. And what I expect we're going to hear is, you know, DePuy's theme that everyone knew metal particles would come off metal hips. That may be true, but nobody knew the extent to which that would occur. Nobody knew the type of damage that could cause. And so what I think the theme is going to be from the plaintiff's standpoint is that even though debris comes off all hips, with metal on metal, it's different. It's different. It causes more damage to the hip joint. There's a lot more metal coming off this hip than anyone expected. And DePuy should have been aware of these issues before they put the hip on the market, and should have been very proactive once somebody raised the red flag and said, hey, we have a problem here. So that's where we are. If you have any questions about the trial or what's going on, or any questions about the litigation, feel free to give us a call. You can reach us at the phone number on the screen. Also, you can go to our website, fill out one of our online forms, and we'll call you right back.